Joining us now, Major General William Enyart. He's a former adjutant general for the Illinois National Guard. He's also a former U.S. congressman from Illinois. General, thanks for joining us. Is this the best use of the National Guard?
Katie, that really is just a self-evident question. It absolutely is not. You know, the National Guard really serves two purposes in this country. One is to supplement, to reinforce the regular forces when need be in time of conflict, like we did so well in Iraq and Afghanistan. At one point during Iraq, National Guard forces were more than 50 of the soldiers and airmen in Iraq. The second mission is to provide support to the state's governors, whether it's for tornadoes, ice storms, blizzards, hurricanes, forest fires. The list goes on, and including civil disturbances occasionally. So those are the two missions. The mission of the National Guard is not to provide civilian law enforcement. That is not what we do. It's not what we're trained to do. The National Guard is a blunt force. It is a sledgehammer, and it is not a civilian law enforcement agency.
We've seen the National Guard, state-run National Guard, deployed to individual cities when necessary. We saw it here in New York City when there was a spate of subway pushings and subway murders, when it seemed like, and the numbers showed, crime within the subways was getting out of control or close to it. People did not feel safe. We saw the National Guard here. Is there an argument to be made that the presence of the National Guard does something to deter crime and does something to help neighborhoods that are plagued by it?
Well, it can serve as a show of force, if you will. And certainly we have seen it happen on occasion, but those are few and far in between. And Chicago is not suffering any spate of violence here. The crime statistics in Chicago, like they are in most other major metropolitan areas, is actually down dramatically over that last several years. So the National Guard is not going to be particularly effective in dealing with that. In Washington, D.C., we've got them standing around the Washington Monument and Union Station and taking selfies with tourists. That's not an effective use of a well-disciplined force that is to be used for other more important purposes.
Is this a winning issue for President Trump because of all the nuance involved? I mean, we're talking about how crime is down, and I just showed some numbers. Crime is down in a lot of respects, but it's up in other respects. There is still an issue with crime, especially in big cities. I mean, Kansas City is worse than Chicago, yes, and they're not being sent to Kansas City. That should show you the politics of this. But there is a crime issue. And when you're arguing about whether the crime is not as bad as the president is saying, is it hard to win the argument? How do you convince somebody that you want to take crime seriously and you want it to stop and you want to restore order, when you're also saying it's not as bad as X?
Well, certainly everyone wants to feel secure in their person, in their place, and in their property. And that is something that good, effective community policing does. And so you have a question of how do you allocate resources? You know, it's not free to mobilize the National Guard. The National Guard is an expensive instrument to put out in the streets. As your previous correspondents were talking about, nobody seems to know exactly how much this is costing. I can tell you it's costing millions of dollars. When we mobilized the 33rd Infantry Brigade Combat Team to go to Afghanistan the year prior to that, it cost $600 million to train 3,500 soldiers to go off to fight that war. So this is not free. National Guard only don't get paid only if they're not on active duty. You put them on active duty, they get paid. So it is expensive, and it's a temporary solution. You're not going to mobilize these guardsmen for years. You're not going to put them on the streets of New York or Chicago or anywhere else for years at a time. More importantly, what they should be doing is spending the money that comes out of vital DoD dollars. I mean, that's money you can't spend on the Army or the Navy or missile defense or for that matter, fighting the hurricanes and floods like we are so often required to do. Instead, you're paying soldiers to stand around in front of the Washington Monument. Not an effective use of resources. Let's do what people really want, and that's help them feel safe and do it by training and providing adequate civilian law enforcement where it's needed.
Major General William Enyart, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your expertise and your experience. Thank you, sir.